my name's Anne-Marie Howell and I am the author of Middle Grade Historical Mysteries, and I'm going to talk to you today about my latest book, The Secret of the Treasure Keepers, which is being published on the 31st of March this year. I'll tell you a little bit about my inspiration for the story and also do a short reading. So I'll tell you a little bit about the book first. So the story is about a girl called Ruth who goes to stay with her archaeologist mother, which is aspiring to be an archaeologist, at a farm in the Fens, which is between Ely and Cambridgeshire. And it's a made-up farm. I completely made this up. It's in my imagination. It's called Rook Farm. And they hear of a treasure discovery there. And when Ruth arrives at the farm, she meets up with the farmer's son, Joe. And Joe clearly has some secrets to hide. There's also a land girl that works on the farm called Audrey, and Audrey watches them very closely, so some very mysterious things are going on. So they find this treasure, and Joe is keeping secrets about it, and Ruth really wants to find out what they are. But when the treasure is stolen, some really mysterious things start to happen, and Ruth and Joe have to get to the bottom of it, who the treasure owned to, who it belonged to, and what's happened to it. And they go on this big journey of discovery to find out. So there's lots of really exciting things and mysterious things happen in the story. So my inspiration for the story was really some treasure finds that were found in this local area. I live in Suffolk, and there was one treasure find in 1942 called the Milden Hall Hoard. And Milden Hall is a town about 10 miles away from where I live. And a farmer was ploughing his field one day, and he ploughed up this amazing hoard of Roman treasure, about 30 pieces of tableware, including this gigantic silver dish that weighed about 8 kilograms. And it's all on display in the British Museum, and also with a replica in Mildenhall Museum as well, so on display locally, which is good. So this really inspired me because what was mysterious about this treasure is the finder didn't report it. So when you discover treasure, you're supposed to report it straight away to the authorities, but he kept it, and he even used the spoons to eat his porridge for breakfast, these Roman spoons. So this really captured my imagination. I thought I could really somehow include this in a story, a really mysterious treasure find. So that's a little bit about the book and my inspiration, and now I'll read to you a little bit from the story. And this is when Ruth and Joe have gone out into the field and they've heard there's this treasure discovery and they've gone to hunt for it. They're doing a bit of excavating with their trowels. This is from chapter 9 of Secret of the Treasure Keepers. So in this scene we've got Ruth and Joe, the two children, and also their mums, Harriet and Mary. Ruth's mum pushed the notebook into her pocket and picked up the trowel. She held the second one out to Joe with a smile. "You have a go at excavating alongside me. Start at this end of the square and use the long edge of the trowel to scrape a thin layer of earth towards you." She paused. "But please don't try and do this on your own without me being here, Joe. It could do more harm than good." "Oh no, I mustn't," said Joe. He was looking at the trowel as if it were a weapon, something to be feared. "Go on," urged Ruth. "It's your land. Imagine how you'll feel if you find something important." Joe shook his head again and bent to stroke Dash, who was quivering. "I'll take Dash back to the house, whose bones ache if he's out in the wet for too long." Ruth nodded. "Maybe you could come back afterwards." Joe gave her a non-committal shrug. "Do you want to go excavating, Ruth?" asked her mum, offering her the trowel instead. Ruth grinned, feeling a surge of excitement. She kneeled on the plank, the cold and damp wood seeping through her trousers. Dipping her head, she used the trowel to scrape the soil towards her, just like her mum was doing. The earth was sticky and quickly stained her woolen gloves, but she was so absorbed in the task she didn't care one small bit. Ruth sensed Joe still as a statue to her right, silently watching. Mary was quiet too. The only sounds were the spatter of the rain, the whoosh of the wind, Dash's occasional whine, and the scrape of metal on dirt. After a while, Ruth looked up and straightened the crick in her neck. She saw Joe give his dog an absent-minded pat. He seemed to have forgotten all about taking Dash back to the house. The small mound of excavated soil began to grow, and Ruth used a shovel to scoop it into a bucket. As she did, she heard the thin scrape of her mum's trowel striking something solid. Ruth's mum sucked in a breath, leaned forward, and continued to carefully clear the ploughed soil away from the things she had found. Ruth, Joe, and Mary gathered round her in a tight huddle. "Look," said Ruth, pointing to something long and thin emerging from the peat. Joe quickly dropped to his knees. He reached for the object and wiped away some of the cloying mud. It looked like a long, slim-handled cooking spoon. "Careful, Joe," exclaimed Mary. "This is quite unbelievable," Ruth's mum said, reaching for a second and then a third similar-shaped object. I think they are silver cooking ladles. She used a finger to scoop earth from one of the ladle's bowls, then her handkerchief to polish them a little. She squinted. There's an engraved inscription. It says, Octavius. Ruth felt a flare of recognition. Isn't that a Roman name? Yes, these objects are Roman, I am sure of it. Ruth's mum turned to Mary, her eyes glimmering. I think you've unearthed a treasure trove on your land. Treasure, exclaimed Ruth with a grin. Mary's smile stretched from ear to ear. Well, I never, she wheezed. These things are likely to be valuable then. Ruth's mum grinned and nodded. The British Museum will certainly be very interested. Ruth glanced at Joe, expecting to see a similar look of glee, but instead his lips were drawn into a hard line, and his eyes seemed to be swimming with alarm as he stared at the ladle in his hand. So Joe knows something about the treasure. This all gets very exciting. So that's a reading from The Secret of the Treasure Keepers, published by Osborne. Lovely talking to Reading Zone today, and hope to see you again very soon. Bye.